All right, everybody, we are happy to welcome you back to Behind the Wings. I'm Lizzie Maurer. I am still the SAAC president for the year.
I'm Chris Hoover. I'm still the SAAC vice president for the year.
And today we are with...
Adam Kolberg, head strength coach.
Yes, so to start, we're going to do a little Falcon recap. So since the last time, you haven't seen me in a little bit. I wasn't with the last podcast, but with Dr. Davis, it was great. Since the last time, there's been a lot going on in winter sports, so we're not going to give you the full rundown just because we might be here for the entire 30 minutes if that were to happen. But I'll give you a little bit rundown of what's happened. Men's basketball is at a 15-2 overall record. Women's basketball is at 14-3. Wrestling has been traveling and doing a lot of tournaments that I know Acro helped run a tournament that we hosted, which was really fun. Men's swim is at a 3-2 record, and women's swim is at a 2-4 record. So that's kind of a little bit of an overview of what's been going on. But if you go to fightingfalcons.com, you can get full game recaps and more information about who people played and what's upcoming a little bit better. So that's the short version of the Falcon recap for today, because that would have been a long one.
It would have been.
So, Chris, you want to start us off?
Of course. So, Adam, if you would, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and give us a quick background on you?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Western Maryland. So if anybody knows where like Frostburg State is or like Potomac State,
How dare you.
I kind of grew up in between those two campuses in Maryland and played, pretty much every sport through high school, middle school, elementary school, all the way up. And then I went to West Virginia University for undergrad. And then also stayed there for grad school. I feel like my mic's cutting out sometimes.
Yeah, if you pull it in, it helps a little bit.
Anyway, I went to West Virginia University for exercise physiology undergrad and then my master's degree. And then I've basically been a strength coach since then. Back in 2015 is when I graduated with my master's degree. And I've been at, I don't know if we're going to get into like my coaching history, but I can just go through it real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Basically, my first kind of, experience was interning with West Virginia football program as a strength coach during that last year of grad school. And then I worked at Pro Performance for a couple years, and then my wife and I moved to Florida. And I worked at a couple private gyms. I worked at University of Tampa for a year. I worked for the Yankees for basically 2 summers with their short season rookie ball. And then I worked for the Rockies as a minor league strength coach for 2 seasons. And then the next season was obviously cut short because of COVID. And then I basically came back here and worked at Pro. And then when the job at Fairmont came open, I basically jumped on that as a great opportunity and have been here since 2011, February of 2011. 2021.
Oh, it's 2011, Adam.
2021.
Yeah. Dang.
And yeah, that's basically my coaching career. And then I mentioned my wife. We've been high school sweethearts. So we've been together since 2008. So coming up on 17 years.
Dang. Well, I guess I never...
And I see Riley in the background. We have a 9-month-old daughter.
Yes, she's so cute. We love her. But I guess I never realized how extensive your background was. Like, I knew you were here for the first time when I was a freshman. And, but I guess I never, investigated what was going on before that. But that's, really extensive.
Quite the resume.
Insane. I didn't realize how broad it was and, how many things you can do with that. It's crazy.
And I think that even shows in the training we get and just the sentiment about around the weight room among athletes. I mean, it shows that it benefits us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is when I took over at Fairmont, I know that, from an outsider's perspective, we're a Division II, and there's some Division IIs out there that don't even have strength coaches, and they don't have a consistent training program. And but the mentality for me coming in was, I've worked at Division I's, high Division II. University of Tampa is a very elite Division II, and then obviously being in professional sports was probably what prepared me the most of just what does a professional level weight room look like? What not just within the X's and O's of what exercises we're doing and things like that, but really just the day-to-day management of how do we make everything flow and be efficient with our time and our resources and get the things done that we need to get done. Yeah,
it's really impressive. And I mean, this kind of leads into the next question, but what path did you take to get to Fairmont State, which you gave your background a little bit, but what really brought you here? And then did you always want to be a strength and conditioning coach?
So the path here, honestly, I think it was just a perfect timing situation. Even when I was at WVU and I was kind of thinking about where I would potentially want to work, even as just a student or like a young student intern strength coach, Fairmont State was kind of always on the radar because we my wife and I my wife also went to West Virginia and graduated with her. She has a doctoral degree actually from WVU as well. But we liked living in Morgantown. Our family is only an hour and a half away, so we knew that if we were here and we had kids, we'd have grandparents close by and aunts and uncles and cousins close by. So Fairmont was kind of one of those schools that was in that vicinity that was kind of always on my radar. And then when I saw the job came open, I was like, this is definitely a great opportunity for me to jump on. And I know as we maybe get on, like especially when it comes to jobs and just being who I am, I'm just very relentless. So I know when I applied for the job, I sent like every single coach in the athletic department multiple emails with my resume and cover letter.
That's the way to do it.
Same thing with Greg. Wow. And I did have a couple other people in the area that put in a good word for me and things like that. And even after my first interview, I remember when I got hired and I walked through, and you guys most of you remember Bob, the old athletic trainer. When I first met Bob, he's like, Adam, I don't know why we even interviewed other people, because after your like attitude and all that, he's like, we wanted to pretty much hire you. So it's just like that relentless mentality of coming in and really wanting to be hungry and take over a good opportunity.
Well, and that's like very seen with how you are in the weight room and how you coach us as well, and like tell us everything, and everything's very meaningful and impactful, and like it only makes sense that that's how you got hired here, is by being how you are as a coach. So it's like, I think that's a really cool thing to kind of like share, that like being true to who you are and the type of mentality you're going to bring can get you to where you want to be. So that's fascinating and kind of cool though. Yeah, like I want to do that.
And the second question about that, I always want to be a strength coach. And this is actually really interesting because I didn't even know that it was a job that you could make any money at. I didn't even know it was even like a profession until I was like, I think probably my sophomore, junior year. So I actually started college as a bio, like pre-med, pre-physical therapy major. And I actually wasn't sure if I wanted to go and be like an actual physical therapist, or if I wanted to go and do like zoology or teach high school biology. Like I love science. I was kind of a science, like a biology nerd, and kind of, all through high school. And I really liked all that stuff. I was one of the only kids in my high school that I remember like passing the AP biology test, like just because like I was so interested. It wasn't because I studied. I was just interested in it.
So was hard.
It was one of those things where I went to WVU and I wasn't really sure, and I was looking at the class course book in the catalog, and I saw I kept seeing these exercise phys classes, and I was like, what is this? So I talked to my advisor at the time, and they were like, well, you have to be in that program to take those classes. Mm-hmm. So I reached out, got into the program. And then we had a lifting class where we learned how to do the cleans, the snatch, the bench, squat, deadlift. And one of my professors, like I kind of, again, just naturally was kind of coaching the people that I was training with. Like, I mean, I had lifted obviously with training in high school with sports and everything, and have been obviously still consistently training, but I wasn't as proficient as those lifts as what most of you guys are now then. And I, was trying to help myself and my classmates. And I had a professor come by and, after class one day, he's like, hey man, you kind of like are already coaching athletes, like you're coaching your classmates. He's like, why don't you think about being that as your job? And I was like, well, I have no idea that's a job. And I went home and I went on YouTube and started watching like college strength and conditioning job videos, and like watching, basically people yell at athletes in the weight room. And I was like, this kind of combines like exactly what I want to do. It keeps me around athletes. It keeps me in the weight room.
Wow.
And then also there's just such a deep scientific aspect of it. And everything's kind of rooted in science and even biology to an extent. So it's one of those things where it was kind of like, to me, the perfect fit. So if I wouldn't have had that professor, shout out to Dr. Pastilli, whom I'm still good contact with. He's still up at WVU now. If I wouldn't have had him kind of put that in my ear, I would have I may not be doing this.
That's crazy.
So I would just be maybe a high school biology teacher talking about Olympic weightlifting in high school biology. Yeah. So
that would be hard to imagine.
Yeah. I don't think I can picture you in that role.
I don't know.
This is like perfect. Like it matches you so well.
I do think it's perfect. I think it's one of those things where like, whether you want to call it like fate or whatever, I do think it's like I am doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. But I think that, at the end of the day, being a coach is being a great teacher. And I think that even whether I was a teacher in a classroom setting or a sport coach or something like that, like I think I would have been doing it the same with the same approach. And I think I would have, had, whether it's a weight room or a classroom, like I think there's still a lot of similarities. And you guys, and I think about this too, like all the great high school teachers that I had or the great professors that I had. I mean, they kind of did it from the same perspective of how I coached the weight room, of just wanting it to be engaging and fun and enjoyable, while also challenging at the same time, and really kind of forcing you to work hard. So
yeah, I love that.
So what is your favorite part about being a strength and conditioning coach?
I think it's kind of all what I said there, just the idea of blending the science with the art. And there's a huge component from just the ability to communicate with student athletes and other people in the department. I think the biggest thing for me, though, the thing that I take the most joy about is just seeing our student athletes succeed. I mean, at the end of the day, I know that sounds cliche, but that is really what I'm here for. Yeah. At the whether it's succeeding in the weight room and hitting a PR on your squat or your vertical jump or your sprint time, or whether it's going out and winning an MEC Player of the Week or a first team all conference or a conference championship. I mean, women's basketball winning the conference last year is maybe up to this point like one of the highlights of my career at Fairmont State. Obviously, I know you guys won it a couple of years ago as well, and hopefully we get another one this year. Yes. And it's just one of those things where because of just how much goes into it, like there's just the collective idea of getting everybody, whether it's 100 guys on a football team or 15 athletes on a basketball team, just that collective that goes into winning something important is really what at the end of the day I'm doing all this for.
And I think it's important to state, I guess. I know on the acro team specifically, with the years you've been here, I've seen a lot of improvement in our skills and our strength and everything. And even in myself, it's really undermined how important a strength and conditioning program is to any sport, and especially a good one at that. So it's been really, really cool to kind of see the importance and see how our department is really embracing your role and it is important to every single program, and it's not being oh, well, you just have to go to lift, do these things, whatever. We really value those things, and we know the importance, and that goes to show that what you're doing is genuinely helping us get to the places we want to be as athletes and as a university. So it's really, really fascinating.
And I think that's something that is sometimes the hardest part about about my job, my profession, and my role, the role that we have as strength coaches is 90% of our student athletes don't really want to always lift. But so we have to make an environment where when you are there, you realize that there is value to it, and that even if it might not be what you want to do at that point in time of that day, you're going to do it because you know how important it is, and you enjoy being in there. And when you leave the weight room, you feel way better than when you got in there mentally and physically.
Every single time.
So I think something you guys do a great job of as well is taking someone who has no weight room experience at all and getting them to a place, whether it's over the course of a season or two or their entire time here, to where they're competent and comfortable in the weight room.
Yeah, and again, I think that goes back to just what I said about being a teacher. At the end of the day, we're teaching strength, we're teaching movement, we're teaching exercises. To an extent, we're teaching you guys how to take care of your body and be adults and things like that as well. And a lot of that goes back to just my time working in the private sector, up in Morgantown. I still do stuff to this day, helping at Pro Performance. And I mean, most of our clientele up there is middle school, high school athletes. And a lot of them are very inexperienced and have never stepped foot in the weight room and are oftentimes even just timid of doing anything in the weight room. So it's really trying to figure out how can we meet the athlete where they're at and realize that we're not going to be able to expect a 12-year-old in a private sector or an 18-year-old college freshman who's never touched the weight to do the exact same things that, professional athletes that I've worked with were doing it, as easily.
Yeah. I think that's an important thing to note. Chris, I'm skipping a question, so don't freak out because I know sometimes we get weird, but I want to know, what is a piece of advice you would give us as athletes that you wish you had in college?
Yeah, there's a lot. I think I think the biggest thing is I know you guys are probably going to know that this is one of my first things is just how important sleep is.
Yes.
I've always been a pretty big, as far as back as I can remember, proponent of getting good quality sleep. Definitely not as much as what I should have when I was in high school as a competitive athlete and in college as just trying to study for tests and things like that. I wasn't, but I think that's the biggest thing is sleep is the most important thing. It is the most important performance enhancing, mentally and physical and performance enhancing thing that we can be doing. So I think that's huge. And then obviously just again, fueling your body and how you do that. I mean, those are things that, in college, I definitely was not fueling my body with all the right things. Looking back at it now, I think, those things can't be overlooked. They're the epitome of what makes us be our best as a student, as an athlete, as a person. Those two things are very, very, very important. But really from a training standpoint, I think back to when I was training in high school, we did a lot of, it was more like a bodybuilder style thing where everything was kind of split up into isolated exercises. You're going to have your chest day one day and then your back day. And that just doesn't transfer to sport as well because you're not just you're not just using your back to do any sport that we have on campus. You're just not. So training the whole whole body to work as a unit and to function as a unit. I think that's something that I would probably go back and change a little bit about what I did when I was training when I was younger, and honestly just being smarter about plyometrics and speed training and stuff like that. I think when I was in high school for football, we ran like 40-yard dashes like 1 or 2 times the entire like year, and now most of our sports, especially our field sports, are sprinting max effort once a week. Because we realize that you can't get faster if you're not being consistent with. So things like that. Just being more well-rounded and doing those. What's the most important things is doing the most important things very, very regularly.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up sleep, because I know we all joke about it and how Adam's like, we always have to sleep good, but like it truly is important. And I love sleeping, so I don't have problems with that. But like I know that's something that as a college student you do need to be told that and reminded that, and you almost like dad all of us by telling us we need to sleep and make sure we're doing the right things.
You've made me not feel bad for taking an hour-and-a-half nap in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if you got to get it in, you got to get it in.
See,
somehow.
it is great, and I know that is like, it's such a niche thing, but it makes such a big impact. And I've seen it impact me. And I mean, you were just telling the acro team in lift yesterday that like our classes start next week. So Adam told us to figure out our schedule to make sure we're sleeping enough. And he also told us we're allowed to study in the mornings. You don't have to pull all-nighters to study. So that's a good piece of advice that I feel like
that was something actually even in college, like just without for any good reason. And I'll be honest with you, I definitely didn't study as much as I should have ever. I was big on like if I had an exam the next day, I would rather go to bed early, get up, have a good healthy breakfast, and then cram before the exam instead of trying to stay up all night and pull an all-nighter and cram. Like that's just something that just worked better for me, and I feel like there is some logic to that as well.
Well, that's how I am, so I get that. Yeah. All right, Chris.
So how do you balance, and what is the process of developing lifting programs for all the different sports you have, and how do you tailor that to different teams?
So I think I'm going to try to keep it really simple, because I try to keep things, the keep it simple, stupid statement. Yeah. I mean, actually I'm going to be at the NSCA conference that we're hosting. I'm going to that's going to be one of my slides. It's like we need to make all of our lives easier as strength coaches and for our athletes is to keep things simple. So there's kind of like a couple layers to it. The first layer is you're all human beings first and foremost. So all humans need to be squatting and pressing and pulling and hinging and doing some sort of carry and trunk stability and things like that.
Yeah.
Some sort of plyometric that's just required as being a functioning human being, whether that's in your sport or out or just in daily life.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is looking at your sports individually from there. What do we look at in terms of what, early in the off season, what are going to be the demands of your sport? How do we make sure that we're prepping you for those? And then once you start playing, like if you take basketball, for example, like we know that we need to build up their conditioning earlier in the fall. And then as they start playing more and more, we can back off of that. We don't have to do as much. Mm-hmm. Just like their change of direction. Like we don't have to do a bunch of agility work with them because they're getting that in practice every single day. So what would then, once we get into the season portion, we have to look at what are they getting a lot of and not do as much of that and figure out what they're not getting much of and do more of those things. Right. Yeah. So, again, for basketball, for example, they're going to get a lot of change of direction. They're going to get a lot of jumping. So we won't jump as much and we won't do any change of direction, but we're going to find out what they're not doing. They're not going through like big ranges of motion. So we're going to make sure that we're still squatting through big ranges of motion, and pushing and pulling through big ranges of motion. And then the last thing to look at is what are kind of, because of the demands of the sport, what are some typical like overuse things that they're going to get? And then we try to work in, how can we, be more proactive and preventative on what are some of those especially the more, not as much the acute, like catastrophic things, but more of like the wear and tear injuries. Like for swimmers, for example, like you're going to potentially get some issues with your shoulder. So what can we add into your program to make sure that we can alleviate some of that wear and tear that just has to occur because of the demands of the sport. Yeah. So that's kind of the way it is. It's like everybody needs to be doing, 75 to 90% of the same things because we're all human beings and we're all athletes. And then we start kind of looking at it from like the sports specificity aspect of what does your sport require? Let's do a lot of that in the off season or in the preseason. And then let's not do as much of that when you're actually in your competitive season. And let's find some things that we can fill the gaps with, to try to alleviate as many injuries as possible. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I didn't realize ever how you did it, but the more I think about it, the more there is crossover between sports and what I see is going on in the weight room. So that's like,
yeah, and there's only so many squats you can do and so many types of deadlifts and so many, 90% of the time you're going to see some of our athletes doing a sumo deadlift or doing a front squat. Like it is what it is. Like there's only so many versions of what you can do. So.
And they're great.
Yeah, I honestly would have thought it was the opposite. I would have thought there was a lot of variety between sports, and then you focus on things that each make sense 100%.
But I feel like it's a perception, and like me thinking like, well, why would a swimmer do the same stuff that I'm doing when I'm doing a very different sport? But the way you explained it is like really eye-opening and makes me realize that like we all need the same basic movements, and then there's some minor changes that need to be made. But like overall, we're all doing very similar things to our bodies, but it's just those little differences that like make an impact.
Well, and at the end of the day, your sport is what you're here to train for. Yeah. So the only way that you can become a better swimmer, at least in the actual technique of swimming, is to swim. Like there's nothing that I can do in the weight room that's going to make you better technically at swimming. Yeah. Now we can make you stronger, and we can make you more athletic and more powerful and things like that. And to an extent, even just have better conditioning. But at the end of the day, to get better at your tumbling passes, yes, we can add strength to that, but you have to be able to tumble and then utilize that strength for your sport.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to note too, because it sometimes feels like the weight room should just like miraculously work things out and like you'll be magically better at your sport. But
I wish it was like that. I wish every 500-pound squatter on our men's teams were also always the best at their sport.
Yes.
Right? But if you can't hit a baseball or if you can't make free throws, it doesn't really matter how strong or how fast you are.
Yeah, but then you get to say you're strong, which is the fun part.
I mean, and again, I still live for that stuff. So at the end of the day, like I'm still going to celebrate whether you're the best shooter on the team or the strongest on the team. To me, they're equally as awesome.
As important. So. Yeah. That's really cool. Chris, where do you want to go to the fun questions, or do one or two more like serious?
I think we can get this last one and then
get the last one.
I think the fun ones will go back quick.
Okay, so what are you most looking forward to in the coming years for Fairmont, and are there any goals you have for the weight room or training plans for athletes?
So obviously I know you guys had Dr. Davis, and I've had a chance to talk to Dr. Davis as well. Somebody's alarm's going off.
Sorry. That was my Coach Danielle is trying to call me currently, but she's going to have to wait. That's really rare for me to get a phone call, so I'm sorry, everybody. That's really bad. Anyway, do you need me to reread the question?
No, we're good. I got it. So obviously having Dr. Davis here and him kind of really, buying into, trying to continue to grow our athletics and make our sports, very competitive all across the board. That's something that is very, very exciting for me. And I know that he's mentioned this, and I've said this since I've been at Fairmont. I would love for us to win the Commissioner's Cup. Yeah. I would love for us to do that. It's definitely going to take us to have probably 4, 5, 6 sports all win, or at least finish like top 1 or 2 in the conference and in their respective sports. That would be a huge just badge of honor. Going back to what I said about just what all goes into that. Like if football were to win, if women's basketball wins, if A&T wins, if softball or baseball wins, if we can have something like that where we have 5, 6, 7 sports that can compete and win a conference championship. Just the amount of people and the amount of effort and the amount of time and things that go into that would be extremely, extremely amazing. And I would love to see that. And that would kind of be like obviously the highlight of my coaching career. And I think just other little things that we're trying to do, we're just always trying to continue to add things to the weight room. And something that I've also wanted to do is the fueling station, and just trying to provide more resources for our student athletes in terms of just what we talked about earlier about the nutrition aspect and things like that. So those are all things that I think we're going to make happen. It's just, the monetary aspect and the financial aspect, and then just the time and space and things like that, and just getting those things to come to fruition. But I'm very, very optimistic that those things will happen in the next few years.
Yeah. And I think those are goals that everybody kind of has. And you got the candid Dr. Davis mentioned in. We do it every single episode. Somehow he gets mentioned. But
there's definitely a culture of growth towards Fairmont State. So I'm as usual excited to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So moving into the fun stuff. So you mentioned earlier your daughter. What's the biggest shock you've experienced as a dad up to this point?
This is going to sound really, really cheesy, but I do feel like everybody told me how awesome it was going to be. And it's been more awesome than what I can explain. Like that's the biggest thing. Just getting to kind of see her it's like every day she's learning and doing something new, and growing way too fast. It's definitely something that, being like getting to be her dad is like the most important thing in the world. Yeah. So it's one of those things where like, I don't want to take that for granted. So I think that's probably what it's really been, is just getting to experience it. It's been better than what I would have really imagined and what anybody would really would have told me. And it's made me a better person. And I think that's something that's I kind of expected, but again, I don't think I realized just the magnitude of what it was going to be like.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cute. I love that. Sweet. Okay. So what type of music do you listen to when you work out?
So I can listen to a lot of different things. You will sometimes hear in the weight room anything from like Chris Stapleton, Cody Jinks type country, kind of like that outlaw country. I also listen to like I like reggae, like I can listen to like Bob Marley, things like that. And then I'm big on this. This is gonna sound really weird, but I listen to the blues a lot too. I like the blues, whether it's things like from like BB King or like there's a guy named Tab Benoit that I listen to a lot. Anything like that, anything that like kind of makes me even something as like Dave Matthews Band, like bands like that. Like there's something about just I want to be in a good mood when I'm training. I don't necessarily need to be like banging my head off the wall. I just want to be in a good mood and be like happy and enjoy it. But I definitely still will love like an AC/DC or Led Zeppelin or like something like that, some sort of like heavy metal or something. I'm definitely into that stuff too when I'm training. But most of the time it's like stuff that just makes me in a good mood.
Yeah, and those weight room speakers have heard probably every song in the book from any genre. They are always playing the craziest things. You walk by with different teams and there's always different music going on too, which is crazy. But I think they gave us the 5-minute warning, Chris. They did.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we made it pretty far. I'm pretty impressed. But with that, the interview portion is now going to end just because we are on a little bit of a time crunch, which we are working to fix so we can bring you longer and better interviews. But so, Adam, are there any athletic style competitions you've always wanted to train for and try?
Something different than what I've already like competed in. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything different that I've wanted to do that I can think of off the top of my. Actually, one thing that I have not done, and this, I'm not sure where I'm at with this but is like entering a masters like track and field event, like a track and field thing, like masters division, and doing something. Masters, by the way, is basically a way to say that you're over the hill, essentially, in terms of your athletic career. But I was, I never ran track. My high school didn't have track, but because of just how important and how much I like sprinting and the speed training aspect of what we do as strength coaches, like I think that'd be something cool to train for. I just don't know how I fit all of that into my already training and schedule of what I do, but it'd be something really cool if I signed up for it. Like I would train for it.
Totally
and something. So I think that's something that'd be different that I have not already competed in, because I've done powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting meets and competing in jiu-jitsu and things like that. So it'd be something kind of different.
Yeah.
I think after you're showing in the pool, I think you got a triathlon under your belt.
Ooh.
I'm not. I wish I was, but I don't think I have the mental fortitude to do long distance events. Like I've done 5Ks and I could do something like that. I've done like a Tough Mudder and things like that where you're doing like the obstacle course races, but like I don't know how I would feel about the run, bike, swim for like all day type event. I don't know if I'm cut out for that mentally.
In my brain, I feel like I could do that, but then I think I would actually go to do that, and I don't think it would end very well for me. But
yeah,
that would be fun.
I'm a short sprint type sport person for sure.
That's valid. Fair. I get that.
So
who's gonna win the Super Bowl?
To be honest with you, I very rarely watch professional sports. I just don't take the time. I mean, between just my job and trying to watch our Fairmont State athletics, like I really don't keep up to date with it. I mean, I know no one's probably going to like this, but I mean, I think the easiest choice would probably be the Chiefs, but I would like to see somebody else obviously win this year. But I think that if I had to like bet any money on it, I would probably bet it on the Chiefs.
Can't believe you left that question in after the weekend I had, Chris.
Yeah, I know you'd probably want the Lions, but they're not in it anymore. So
Nope, don't have to remind me. That was really. I didn't even watch that game because I was so convinced we had it in the bag, and then
you guys did not.
There's always next year, so
always next year.
We'll be back. Dan Campbell, don't count him out.
What hobbies do you have outside of being a strength and conditioning coach, outside of your job and being a dad?
Yeah, well, I kind of mentioned this. Like I do, train jiu-jitsu, and I think that's something that again, probably aside from being Ruby's dad, and aside from kind of just the leadership role that I have at Fairmont State in terms of like running the weight room, I think it's one of those things that makes me just a better human being. Mm-hmm. I think it's because of just it's kind of like human chess, where you're trying to break each other's appendages and choke each other out and things like that. So just the mental aspect, you can't be training jiu-jitsu and be thinking about, oh, I have to have this meeting, or I have to make this phone call, or this athlete's being a pain in the butt, or whatever it is. You can't think about that stuff when you're training. So it's a good way to just kind of get your brain to think of something that's not your job, and no stress. It's kind of sounds counterintuitive, but it's a very stressful endeavor that actually alleviates stress in my life. If that makes sense. So
I'm so glad you made that comparison. Because I used to do a little bit of jiu-jitsu before I swam, and I've compared it to chess, and people have never understood it. That just made my day.
Yeah. Good job. No, it's an amazing martial art. It's an amazing sport, and it's growing, and it's something that I really, really, I love doing, and it's something that I plan to do and that's the thing about it. You can adapt it. I plan to do it for literally the rest of my life. Like, it's something that I want to do for forever. Yeah. So I love doing it.
That's cool. Okay. Do you want me to go with the next one? Okay, so this one's a little bit funny, and I feel like it needs a preface. So Javi was a very vital person in the weight room for some of us for a few years, and Adam's very well aware of this. Many of us still keep in touch with Javi. We love Javi. Shout out to Javi. But how do you expect the strength and conditioning program here at Fairmont State to continue to thrive without Javi? Because it's been tough.
Well, yeah, I mean,
we've had
so for those that don't know, he was our previous GA.
Yes.
I mean, obviously I appreciate everything Javi did, and he's kind of doing some awesome things over at Baylor.
Yes.
But fortunately or unfortunately, that's part of like my job is how do I make sure that things stay the same? And I was actually having this conversation yesterday of like, there at some point, maybe a point in time where I'm not at Fairmont State, and it's how do I set up the weight room, and how do I set up the culture, and how do I set up that line of communication with the coaches and administration, so that we have some sort of system in place, though, that no matter who's here, all those things can continue to function at a high level. And not everybody has gotten to work with Tyler, but Tyler's been amazing.
Great.
He's been awesome. And he's done some things for me that have made my life significantly easier moving forward. And again, unfortunately for us, he's going to be graduating in May. Fortunately for him, he's going to be graduating in May with his master's.
Yes.
But it's going to be something that he's going to be really hard to replace. So it's like and if I feel like if I'm doing a good job as kind of their, a coach to them as coaches, but as like a mentor to them, like it should be very hard for me to find a way to replace them at the end of their time at Fairmont State. So it's making sure that we squeeze as much out of them in the 2 years that we got them, and set them up for success, and then just have a system in place and get better every year at what I do, so that when I bring in somebody new, they can hit the ground running.
Yeah, there's been a lot of amazing GAs that we've met, and a lot of people have helped in the weight room, whether it's been for a semester or longer, that have made a lasting impact on a lot of people and a lot of teams, and it's been fun.
And I think that's something too that you asked me, like what I'd be most proud of. I think at the end of the day, like when I'm at some point done being a strength coach, like I think I'm gonna be very proud of not only the athletes that I've helped be successful on and off the field and later in your lives, but just the coaches and the interns and the people like that I've been able to be around, because at the end of the day, like, again, nothing makes me happier, like us winning a conference championship. Nothing makes me happier than having Javi now at Baylor being very successful. Daniel down at Southeastern Louisiana being successful. Ryan Yeager, he was only here for a semester. He works in the NBA G League as a strength coach. So it's one of those things where having all of those coaches having been here is something that I'm extremely proud of as kind of their mentor and somebody that, not only that, but their friend really at the end of the day as well.
It's also really fun for the teams too, because we love when there's a new GA. The Acro team's currently really excited about the new GA that's in the weight room. He's been really fun so far. So it's always exciting, and it's like a little light even in the hard parts of season. There's always somebody new that is excited to get to know you and learn about you and learn about your sport. So I guess that's a benefit of Fairmont State's weight room, is we do have some coaching, like not turnover is not the right word, but there's a lot of new faces that you'll get to see and learn from and get new experiences from. So it's been fun. I like it.
Yeah, no, again, it's something that I take a lot of pride in, just making sure that we're bringing in people that are the right fit and want to be around our student athletes and want to help our student athletes. Because if you don't want to do those two things and you're not a good person, then I personally don't want to have you here. It's reality. You have to be putting Fairmont State athletics kind of at the top of everything that you're doing throughout the day. So
yeah, I love that. Chris.
And so to end it off here, what up to this point has been your favorite memory while your time at Fairmont State?
That's a tough one.
It's very tough, because honestly, the crazy thing is, like, it all kind of seems like one big blurry memory. Honestly, like it's been 4 years, but it seems like it's flown by so fast. I think definitely the conference championships that we've won and teams at times probably overachieving when they maybe were counted out and weren't supposed to. I think I take a lot of pride in that. And then obviously something that I'm very, very proud of is who has been our 6 Iron Falcon winners up to this point the last 3 years. And there's those 6 people I know that they're going to go on, or they've gone on or going to be going on to being very successful in life. And again, something that I take a lot of pride in. And there's a lot of thought and care that goes into how we even narrow that down and pick from 400 athletes down to basically one male and one female athlete that kind of best represents what at least my vision for a strength and conditioning program should be, and kind of living and breathing that vision. I think all of those things for sure are things I'm most proud of. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that stands out. I really just, again, it sounds cliche, but it's really just, I think one good example that kind of wraps it all up is the idea that this spring will be the first spring where those of you that came in as freshmen during my, I got hired in the spring, but that first fall that I was here, they're all going to be graduating this year. So it's one of those things where this is kind of like my first graduating class, that's been here as long as what I've been here for. Or almost as long as I've been here for. So I think that's something I take a lot of pride in, that of just seeing our athletes just grow up and mature and become good student athletes, but great people, and moving on after their Fairmont State career is over, and adding value to the world essentially. So very important.
I love that.
Yes.
Is that all of them, Chris?
That's all I got.
That's all I have. Perfect. Well, we did it. Yay. With that, we're going to talk about the upcoming events. On January 29th, men's and women's basketball versus Concord University at home. February 1st, women's and men's swim versus West Virginia Wesleyan College at home. February 1st, men's and women's basketball at Glenville State University. February 2nd, wrestling at the MEC Conference Championships. February 5th, women's and men's basketball at University of Charleston. February 8th and 9th, women's and men's at University of Charleston Invitational. Was that supposed to be swim, Riley? It just says women's and men's. So check the Fighting Falcons website for further updates. At Charleston. Tennis. Oh, tennis is back up. Let's go with that. Then February 8th, women's and men's basketball versus West Virginia State at home. And February 9th, A&T at West Liberty University versus Glenville State. So that is our upcoming events. And Chris, you take it from here.
Can I add one?
Yes, add one.
On the 22nd of February, we are hosting at Fairmont State the West Virginia State Strength and Conditioning Clinic through the NSCA, through the National Strength and Conditioning Association. That's basically kind of one of our governing bodies as a strength coach. So it's pretty awesome for us to be able to host that at Fairmont State on February 22nd.
Yeah, that I've seen some things about that, and I'm very excited to see what that looks like.
There's going to be a lot of big things coming up this semester, so make sure we're staying tuned.
And keep your eyes peeled for all the posts.
Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us. Adam, thank you for joining us. It's been a great episode.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yes,
it's awesome.
Anytime. This was fun.
We want to also welcome everyone back for the spring semester. We hope everyone has a great semester, as well as athletes with a great finishing to the winter sports and a start to the spring sports.
Yes.
Make sure you follow our Instagram at FS Falcons and the SAAC Instagram at Fairmont State _SAAC. And be sure to catch us back here on February 10th with our next guest. And don't miss what's going on behind the wings. Thank you.